Good morning, everyone. My name is Melius Michael. I am a credible specialist of Pearson. I'm also a maths teacher working at the comprehensive school in Birmingham in the UK, and I'm also an assistant head teacher at the school as well. I've been working with Pearson since 2015, and I've been supporting them in different fields in terms of the qualifications. Today, we're going to go through the second module of the International GCSE Mathematics. And just before we start, I just want to make sure that you all have downloaded the delegates booklets, because it has quite a few of the activities that we'll need. Within that, you'll also find the specification for the linear A, as well as this B specification, and there's also the modular within there. We're not going to be using that today. We'll just make references and just make sure that you're aware of some of the changes that we have and the options that you have as well. In the pack, you'll also find a mapping document as well, which is quite useful. But we'll definitely need the delegates booklet with the activities on there, as it will be very difficult for me to have them on the display. If there is an issue with it, just drop a message in the chat, and we'll send you a direct link as well with it. As I start, so if I just make some introductions, if you were part of the previous module, you would have heard some of the information here. However, just in case you were absent to this, I'm going to just repeat that. Now, let's start with the agenda today. So welcome from Pearson. We'll then look at the assessment, a few of the things that we mentioned in Module 1, reference to the problem solving and reasoning, back to the mark schemes, and then a reminder of the support that Pearson offers. Now, we did look at in Module 1 some of the general advice and information regarding assessment, problem solving, reasoning, and mark schemes. In this module, we're going to have a bit more hand in with the activities, and so that we can then align the way that we process the assessments or we use the mark schemes with the examiners, so that when we use things like this in our mocks or assessments in the schools, we understand what the examiners do as well, so that as we provide information or feedback to our students, that's similar and we can better prepare them as well. So it will then support the delivery of the qualification better. So the objectives, a bit more in detail. The objectives here, we need to identify how the qualifications are delivered, review the content of the qualifications, explore how to plan the course and our lessons, understand the assessment of the qualification and how to prepare students, identify the support available from Pearson, and of course, network or have basically an opportunity to ask us direct questions as well within the sessions. Thank you for letting me know about that as well. So as I mentioned, just a quick welcome from Pearson and a reminder of who we are and what we do. So as you can see from here, we are the largest awarding organization. We have a heritage that stretches back over 150 years. And as you can see from the last bullet point there, we do offer qualifications to over 3.5 million students a year. We work with about 6,500 schools and colleges globally. We mark over 10 million exam papers, and we operate in about 70 countries worldwide. So you can see that there's a network here across that we'd like to then offer our schools to work with together. So that therefore, moving forward, if we mention the modular, some people ask questions as well about the module. So I'm going to refer and repeat a few of this, but then go a bit deeper within that as well. So let me just move the slide here. Now, we are the only exam board to offer the choice of modular or linear routes for students taking the international GCSE qualifications. Now, if you are using the linear one, you shouldn't feel the pressure to move to the modular one. You should look at the information from this and decide whether that is the right path for your students. Now, if you believe that they will benefit by either doing more assessments or more in terms of units, then that perhaps is another, but there are some differences that you should be aware. In terms of content, though, it's the exact same content, so you wouldn't have any less than that. So when I'm talking and referring to units, we have the unit 1 and unit 2 here, as you can see. There is a foundation tier and a higher tier. As with the specification A. And students taking the linear approach will have studied all the content before the exam, whereas with this one here, it's broken into units, like I mentioned. Examinations on both of the routes contain a mixture of different question styles, so including multiple choices, short answer questions, calculations, and extended open response questions. They are allowed to use a calculator as well, so that's something to be aware of as well. And some of the information there. And thank you very much as well, Maria, for letting us know. We're just starting now with just general information in terms of the modular. Hello, Sarah, as well. So you can see there's some other information here in terms of the units, so you can see that. And it also shows you which ones are for foundation and which one are for higher. But basically the foundation, anything on foundation is on higher as well, but then you've got the red information on there, which is just for the higher tier. So I'll just give you a minute to have a skim through this information on the screen, and then I'll go into the other topic areas as well. So here we go as well. You can see the differences between foundation and higher in terms of that the black and the red font. Okay, that makes sense with the broken link. I will carry on talking about the general information, and hopefully everyone will catch up with us. In terms of more information regarding this, there are a lot of we've got guides on our website that you can have a look, but the best approach to then make the right decision for your school would be to talk to your Pearson local representative, because they will understand a bit more the demographics there, as well as your school, and they'll have that rapport with you and that relationship with you to then investigate and explore this more, and then direct you to the right resources. So again, any further questions regarding this and whether a change and a shift from a linear to a module, I would definitely recommend you talking to your Pearson local representative. But there are, as I said, there are guides on the website for you to have a look at that. Now, some of the most popular questions about the resits, because as you're doing it in units. So here's some information regarding resits in the modular international GCSE. And I'll read this out in case you can't see that. So learners can resit any unit irrespective of whether the qualification is to be cashed in. If a learner resits a unit more than once, only the better of the two most recent attempts of the unit will be available for aggregation to a qualification grade. Results of units will be held in Pearson's Edexcel unit bank for as many years as the specification remains available. And once international GCSEs in mathematics A modular has been certificated, all units results are deemed to be used up at that level. The results cannot be used again towards a further award for the same qualification at the same level. So that's just some information for you in it. But again, if you want to ask further questions regarding the modular international, please reach out to your Pearson local representative, or the other option you could do is send an email to the teaching maths group, which I'll share the email in one of the last slides within this presentation. Thank you for joining us as well. A few people have mentioned that as well. Now, so I'm going to repeat the one thing I mentioned earlier. I am talking about the modular international GCSE, and welcome to everyone who joined us late. Before we move on, you should not feel the pressure about changing this. And also just to inform you that the modular pathway is only available for the international GCSE Mathematics A, not for B, and not for the UK either. So just in case anyone's considering or thinking about this. So we're going to move on to our next phase, which is the problem solving and reasoning. And again, anyone who's joined us late, please download. And I don't know if the team, and the Zoom team and the Pearson team at the background, if you can maybe share again. And I will ask everyone if they could just mute themselves as well as they join. So, sorry. So there is a pack that you should download that includes the delegates booklet, which we're going to refer to in a few minutes, with some activities in there. And if you haven't printed them out, you can use the Word document to type in or consider or look at the questions while that, because I won't be able to share everything on the screen. So if you could download that. You'll also need access to the qualifications, the specifications of the qualifications, which are also in that pack, and you'll find it under resources. So please download that if you joined us late. So moving into problem solving and reasoning. What I would like to remind you all is that 30% of the questions, especially in the higher tier, are problem solving, and 20% of the questions are reasoning, and that's in the FMB1 and the 4MA1. Whereas in the foundation of the 4MA1, it's about 25% and 15%. So 25 in the problem solving and 15% on the reasoning. So you can see there's a less demand in terms of problem solving and reasoning in the foundation, and that could be something to consider as you choose your which tier to enter your students. As you can see, please have a quick skim of what it says on there as well. And what we're going to do is, and we referred to quite a few of this information in problem solving and reasoning in our first module. So what we want to do now is actually have a look and see how the questions are and how the marks are given into problem solving, and what element is behind that, and what kind of problems the students have to tackle, where problem solving and reasoning come in, and where they have to give their answers, how they have to give their answers as well. So if we look at our delegate booklet and go to activity 2, activity 1 was used in our first module, so we go into our activity 2. And in that one there, you can see the question. So please open your Word document and go into activity 2. This is a typical real-world problem-solving question, translating a real-world non-mathematical problem into a series of mathematical steps, and that's what we need here. We have a diagram of a floor of a room, which is made out of 2 rectangles. It's the L shape there. Again, if anyone from the Zoom Pearson team could send a link to the resources or direct them to the resources, please. And then what we have here, if we read this, if we look at the problem here, Kate is going to tile the room. And what the candidates are given, the students basically in the exam, they're given the dimensions of the room and the tiles and the cost of the tiles here. Thank you very much as well for sharing the link. So please look at the chat to download, to use the link, please. Now, there is no structure to the problem. That's what makes the problem solving here. There is not a part A or part B leading one answer to the other. So they have to break this problem. They have to think about this here. So what I'd like you to do, and I'll give you a few minutes to do this here, is look at the specification, which is also in the delegates booklet, and consider which parts of the specifications are tested. You can use that document to consider. And then once you look at and identify those specification points, look at the questions on the where it says discuss. We'll discuss this at the end. So once you look at and consider and reflect, and you can use, there is a bottom at the bottom here, there is a section where you can write your thoughts and reflections as well. So what steps does it kind of need to take to solve this problem? And you don't have to tab on the Word document. You can do a scribble on a document on the side, but have your Word document as well from the delegates booklet available. So what steps does a candidate need to take to solve this problem? And how would you teach your students to tackle the type of problem? So what's your approach? It'll be nice to hear some views about this. So if we say about 6 minutes to reflect and answer, because I'd like you to also look at the specification from this one here. So you need to open the 4MA1 specification and consider which points before answering those 2 points there as well. So I'm going to be in the background if you have any questions. 6 minutes from this, so it's 28 on my time here. So let's take it to, well, let's make it 35. So up to 35, it's just a minute extra there. So till 35, I'll mute myself. I'll be in the background answering any questions. 6 minutes, look at the qualification, the specification of 4MA1. What points are we addressing here? And then consider about the issues that students have to tackle and how would we approach this here, please. Thank you. Just if you are just completing your any sentences, or if you're waiting, thank you for waiting. And before we carry on, just to welcome everyone who's just joined us. My name is Melius Michael, one of the credible specialists and a teacher of mathematics in the UK. Apologies for any issues with technical issues. We've just started activity 2 in the delegates booklet. There is a link which see if I can copy it. If you haven't downloaded there's in the resources, but there's also a link there that you can download. You'll need that delegates booklet as well for us to actually complete the tasks. So in this case here, to start with, I mentioned the specifications. I don't know if, let's use the chat for this one. If anyone wants to just share any specification points that they think it includes. If you haven't found the exact number, you could just share any of the areas that you think are being assessed, and I'll share with you in a few minutes the specific ones from that. Use the chat, please, just quickly. What areas do you think that are being assessed within this problem? 4.9, yeah, it's correct. And actually 4.9C, I have here, areas of shapes. Well done. Any others, because it's not just one, there's a few more. Anyone else want to contribute within the chat? So we can see, we've got the shape that we can see it as well. However, there are other areas that are being assessed. And if you remember from last module as well, when we put the question, when the examiners or the writers put the questions together, they have to consider the problem solving reasoning, as well as the other objectives that we mentioned last time. So I have, these are the ones here. So we have areas of shape. 1.1 is correct as well. Yep. Use directed numbers in practical situations. 1.1e, use the 4 rules of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And then you also have calculations using standard units as well. So that's the areas that they chose to use for when putting this question together. However, there are some steps that they need to tackle, and then we need to consider how we teach this to overcome those issues as well. Feel any suggestions about what the difficulties will be to the students. I know we said they need to break this down, but what kind of issues do you think they'll face, and how do we go about it? Feel free to also unmute yourself to contribute at any point, or use the chat. I'll give another minute. Even if we have someone, it'll be nice to share their views. And again, we've got different people from different areas of the world here. The English language, there's a lot of words in this one here. And I appreciate that. I mean, we have that even in the UK with some of our lower ability students that we face. The understanding and comprehending is an issue. Another person put knowing to round up the number of packets to 29 as well. Splitting the compound shape and then splitting it to the actual the dimensions as well for them to be able to do the next bit. Great. And that's again, we have to think about how we teach then the students to do that. I mean, from a personal point of view, we usually, there was one time I took him into a different room and we actually started splitting the section as well, using for the very low ability students. We actually used measuring tapes and everything else. In other cases, we used the actual, gave them markers to draw on the windows, the special markers you draw on the windows, as well as on there, make it more practical, and then they then engage with it. But again, I'm talking about the lower ability students within this, but it's the engagement factor there, as well as the real factor here, where they use that so they can see. The other thing that I was going to suggest and mention, again, from experience here, speaking not from the Pearson necessarily, it's spatial awareness. Some of our special needs students, who have special education needs, spatial awareness is an issue there. So when they look at this diagram here, and then when they think of it in real life and you talk about them, they can't put the two things together. And therefore, those practical things that we can do in classrooms could help. There's a lot more suggestions, apologies. So let's look at another problem as well to this, and that takes us to the activity 3 in your booklets as well. So if you look at this one here now, Again, it's trying to translate the mathematical problem into a series of mathematical steps. Here we have a shape constructed from a semicircle and a triangle. We can see that with the dotted line there as well. The data given and the demand calculate the area of the shape. So you can see that there. So we've got some data and it says calculate the area of the shape. And again, what I'd like us to do, I'll give you a few minutes for this to actually try the problem. But as you try the problem, consider what makes this a problem solving one, as well as perhaps the specification. So once again, have a look at the specification of OMA1, as well as consider as you solve the problem yourself, and you can use either the Word document if you've printed, you can write it, or use another paper there. Think about where the students can go wrong, what makes it into problem solving a problem. So again, I will give you, let's say, 6 minutes. So that'll take us maybe to 47 based on my time. So again, 6 minutes, try the problem, look at the specification. It gets you to be aware of the space, and that's the aim of the task as well, not just do the maths as well. Okay, I'll be in the back. And thank you for everyone who's contributing. If you look at if you haven't looked at the chat, there's quite a few different opinions here and different approaches here. So some people are mentioning Pythagoras theorem, the area of the triangle in terms of specification points. And then others are talking, they've mentioned about how they would tackle it as well. And thank you for that. In terms of specification points, these are the ones that have been shared with me. 4.A, know and use Pythagoras theorem. Note the formula is no longer given, by the way. 4.9C, find the area of the simple shapes. 4.9E, find the area of the circles or parts of a circle. And then different people have mentioned different points here, so it's great to be able to read them. Now, it is always good to be breaking down a problem and to also have a variation of a problem as well. And like someone said as well within the chat, it's starting with a simpler problem, building towards this. Something that I talk with my team here at the school, because we've got a team of about 13 teachers. It's not putting a ceiling to it, because if we put the ceiling to it, so it's be careful if you start with simpler and then having that problem there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move on to this one here as well. So if you can see from this slide here, reasoning also forms a part of the international GCSE syllabus. Reasoning skills relate to geometrical and algebraic proof type questions. And then we have an example at the bottom here. And the crucial points from that is full working must be shown to this proof, and you must have a conclusion. If you miss that out, then you'll have a problem to that. I'm going to then put another problem that I'd like you to then look and consider and think about what the issues are with that. So I'm going to just give you 2 minutes with the next problem here. It's not in your booklet, it's just on the slide. So please have a look at this next problem here and just reflect just for 2 minutes. Okay, so until 51. So if we look at this problem here, we have a triangle. It's an isosceles one. Now, if the key thing here is to give a reason, and it says give a reason for each stage in your working. Now, giving a reason, it's not just about doing the calculations. That's not considered that. You have to actually write the sentence. So for example, here, angles in a triangle sum to 180 degrees. If a question has a parallel lines, for example, you're going to use the properties in parallel lines, corresponding angles are equal, alternate angles are equal, must be used. If you just say F angles or Z angles, I know that's how we get them to see that. then no marks are attributed to those. Okay, so it's important that we have that. I'm going to come to the mark scheme, and that should answer your question about the AL students later on. But you have to, when it says reasoning are not calculations, you need to write a sentence, and it needs to go through that. So I'll come back to in terms of mark schemes and how lenient they can be within that, and we'll address that. So that takes us then to the next activity here, which is activity 4, and that's only again for 2 minutes. So please have a look in your delegate booklet. So what we have here, and I'll put this on the slide as well. It says use the factor theorem to show that 2x plus 3 is a factor of that expression. Now, and like it says, and I'll read it out to you, the requirement is use the factor theorem, meaning that using algebraic division through a perfectly valid method, which is not acceptable and will give you no credits because the question specifically says use the factor theorem. So the requirement show means that the full working is required. In this case, clear substitution of -3/2 is required within that. And then it says factorize completely in the next part. So if it mentions a particular method, then we need to do that. So we'll come back to the activity 4 in a second, because we're going to use the mark scheme. So just hold on to that. But just thinking about looking at this question here, making sure that you explain to them when a specific method is in the instructor, they have to follow that. So now moving on to what I was mentioning, mark schemes as well. And mark schemes, it's important that they share that with all the examiners. These are the answers to the questions. They're often given a range of responses a student might give. Now, that doesn't mean that they explicitly give them all of them. There's sometimes other answers, and I'll show you an example later on, where if a method is also correct and gives the right answer, and perhaps they learned that from doing a second specification or another one, or they've learned it online themselves, that will also be accepted, and I'll show examples later on. They can give indicative content to the markers. They also advise markers of common errors. Sorry, examiners use the mark schemes positively, and look to reward marks for correct work seen rather than penalize candidates for what is not seen. So that's the approach, and that's important. That's something addressed to all our examiners as well. Now, the next slide actually shows you a few of the different types of marks. You might be used to that, but let's have a look at it as well. So the M marks, they're the method marks. In this case, a single method mark, the whole method must be completed for the award to be given. So that's the M marks that you have here. The A marks are the accuracy marks, and these marks are awarded for the correct answer. However, there's something that you need to be aware of. It is dependent upon the M mark being awarded. So if they don't get the method mark, they will not get the accuracy mark. If the correct answer comes from an incorrect method, in which case the M mark is not awarded, then the A mark is not awarded either. So that's something that is being instructed. The B marks, they're the independent marks, and they are awarded for a correct answer seen. So that'll be just seeing the answer there. That's when you can get the marks. So the A follows usually through a method mark. The B will just give you the answer there. These marks are often used in questions with a command write down, where the answer is not the result of a calculation or method. Okay, so that's worth knowing and making sure that our students are also trained and they're aware of it. So it's worth sharing that with them as well. A few other points to address from the mark schemes. The prefix D is sometimes used before the M mark. So you have DM. This means that the subsequent method mark is dependent on a preceding mark, which it has to be awarded. So it's worth being aware of it. The ISW means ignore subsequent working. Although this can mean ignore any working on the page, that does not contradict correct working. So and we'll see an example there as well. So the question here, where it says factorize, the question states factorize, and the candidate has factorized the 3/10 of the quadratic. They have gone on to solve an equation equating it to 0, which was not required. In this in this instance, we could see an ISW. The working after the correct factorization has been seen. So here, that's just for you to be aware of that. So it's not automatic though. So we need to be careful with this. So for example, if we have another example, a plus b plus 3a plus 2b, if someone puts a 7ab there, whilst that's a simplification, it should be 4a plus 3b is correct. The next piece of working of, let's say, seeing something like that shows a fundamental error, which we could not ignore. So if it's a fundamental error that students put down and it's not just additional working that could be ignored, then that won't be awarded the mark. So it is there to support the students, but if it's a fundamental error, then the examiners cannot ignore the mark. Then finally, BOD at the bottom, benefit of doubt. Although this is seldom used, there needs to be some compelling evidence in the candidate's work to give this. So that's again. So those are the things that the examiners do to support our students as long as they can. So within a certain limit, which is important to be aware of. And if we look at the mark scheme of the question here, 22. So this is a mark scheme here. You can see the M mark there. So the first M mark is factorizing the term in x squared. We have then alternative methods, which is where, if you see my mouse where it says or, then the second mark would be completing the square, and finally the A mark is for the correct answer, where you can see that A1 there. There's a B1 at the bottom there, where that one there, where the answer can be just written down. That's for part B of that. And also, if a candidate used calculus, this will also gain a mark, and then they have that extra, and you can see that section on the right with the extra guidance that they get as well. Now, if they're not sure, if the candidate uses a method that is advanced, like I mentioned earlier on, and it's outside the international GCSE level, and it's not in the mark scheme, then provided it is correct, they will get full credit. That kind of answers, though, in marking will not be marked by the examiners themselves, and those responses will be passed to the team leader or the principal examiner, who will make sure that they're the correct methods to be awarded the marks. And that's anything that, when in doubt, that's what they'll do with any other type of question as well. So it's important to be aware of it. And now I'm going to go to the general marking guidance that's given with every mark scheme. And I just want to highlight a few of the key points there. Okay, so here's a few things that I will read them out to you as well. So so in case you can't read it from your screen, I need to emphasize that the purpose of the mark scheme is so that the candidate is treated exactly the same. So all candidates, irrelevant of where they sit in this exam, will be treated the same, and that's important to be aware of. Otherwise, once we start out, now, if there is any special requirement, then a different form needs to be submitted with that for the student. Otherwise, everyone within that specification has to be treated the same. There is no such thing as a generalist marker, or a strict marker. Everyone marks precisely the same to the mark scheme, which has been, and then if not sure, it's passed on to the principal examiner. So if I just read out the key points here, all candidates must receive the same treatment. Examiners must mark the first candidate in exactly the same as they mark the last one. Mark schemes should be applied positively. Candidates must be rewarded for what they have shown they can do, rather than penalized for omissions. Examiners should mark according to the mark schemes, not according to the perception of where the grade boundaries may lie. There is no ceiling on achievement. All marks on the mark scheme should be used appropriately. All the marks on the mark schemes are designed to be awarded. Examiners should always award full marks, for example, if the answer matches the mark scheme. Examiners should also be prepared to award 0 marks if the candidate's responses are not worthy of a credit according to the mark scheme. And where some judgment is required, mark schemes will provide the principles by which marks will be awarded, and exemplification may be limited. When examiners are in doubt regarding the application of the mark to be awarded, and then they will, as I mentioned earlier, pass it on to the senior ones as well, the team leaders. Crossed out work should be marked unless the candidate has replaced it with an alternative response. So again, I've had this question before. If a student puts more than one method or more than one answer here, then even if the right one's there crossed out, they won't be awarded. It's only if they cross it out and they don't replace it with another response that is wrong. So just that's also worth sharing with your students. So moving on, let's have a look at how it all fits together. So the next part, how does it all fit together? And that's just to run through the process that this works. So senior examiners use this specification strictly to write questions, papers, and mark schemes. They count each mark carefully to ensure that not only the number of marks at each assessment objective is adhered to, but also the marks allocated to the grades as well. So there's a few of the things, and if you can just scan through what's on the slide as well. So then if we look at another question from 2019, question 11, and I think this was on the foundation paper as it says. It's a problem solving question that was not answered well at all. The key to this question is to read this carefully first and understanding the key facts. There is an obvious clue within this that in the height of the box is 32 centimeters, which is not a multiple of 5. And that was a key for them, a key point to then notice. Now, the other thing that they should have looked at is the last line, which says, show you're working clearly, which means no working, no marks. And a lot of the students there, they lost marks in this one. So that's why we're sharing this. So there's a clue there, there's a problem, and we need to train our students to pick up on those key points there for that. If we look at the maximum of this question, so the first column of this one here shows the question number. The second column shows the scheme or working that we need to see. We see in the fifth column the marks allocated in the first 2 lines of the working in that second column there. For the second mark, the method mark, the candidate's results from the division of 32 by 5 or by 15 by 4 or 30 by 5 and are multiplied for the final answer. So that's where you see that. He also mentioned integer values must be used there. The third column has the answer of 108 that they need to see. The final A mark not only needs to answer of 108, but a conclusion as well. So you see even a simple thing as no here. Otherwise, you won't have that. When you see SC, so you can see the SC there, that means special case. And it says if no marks are awarded, then award B1 for yes with 115 or that. So they gave you special cases where you can award marks. So many candidates were dividing the volume of the box by the volume of the carton. That special case was given for B1 and for yes. So in that case, and then make sure that everyone is awarded the same level of marks. So that's just showing and explaining to you a bit about how they would use that. If we then look at the question that I showed you earlier on, which is this one here. If you look at your pack, you have the question. Maybe if I blur the background, you might see it better. Sorry, let me just get it. There we go. So you have the question, you have the mark scheme here, so that you can have a look at that. That's in our activity 4 here. So what I would ask you now, just for 5 minutes, if you could answer question 26 in your pack here or on next to it, and then look at your mark scheme at the bottom and decide how you were going to give the M1. So put your marks, so answer it yourself as if you were the student, then decide how you would give your M1 and A1 based on this one. So give your method marks and your accuracy marks as well. So I would say, let's say for this one, about 5 minutes to try and do that, and then we'll come back together. So it's 5 past in mind, so 10 past. So 5 minutes, answer the full question, and then use the mark scheme to give yourselves the different marks and see if we all agree with that as well. After we'll have a discussion. Apologies, I will be in the background in the chat if anyone has any query as well. So please go on to activity 4 in your booklets. So if I carry on from here and we look at the mark scheme, in this mark scheme here, we can see that one method mark was given by substitution of minus 1.5 into the expression, and the evaluation not required. So they get the method mark, but just substituting and showing that. So they show the understanding of that bit there. In part B, the first method mark is for showing x squared minus 3x there. And plus k, could be plus k as well, where k would be a constant that they have. This means that it's minimally acceptable division must have the term x squared and x correct, and that's then they'll get the mark there. And then you have the accuracy mark for the correct trinomial there of the trinomial quadratic that you see there. The next method mark is for factorizing the trinomial, and the final mark is for a factorized expression all on one line that you have. And the INDEP that you see means the mark is awarded for an acceptable attempt to factorize the trinomial. So, however, even if if there's an error there, so an acceptable attempt, there is a guidance, there's general guidance that you can have a look and they'll follow that. But that's why that's there, that if there is an attempt towards it, that's even if they've done it wrong, they'll get the mark there. So it's important to be aware of how the mark schemes are used, so that when we mark our mocks, when we mark our assessments, we are basically aligned with what the examiners do, so that we don't give too many marks or too later, so that, and then also to train and make sure students know what to show and how to answer the questions in a paper as well. The other thing I'd like to have a look at, if we look at in our delegates booklet, is activity 5. And that's the front of the exam papers. So if you look at the exam paper here, so that's the front of it. That has vital information for us. So first of all, it says black pen. The black pen is not just a preference for us, and we need to make sure we explain that to you. It's because the other colors will not show when they scan it, and the examiners will not be able to see clearly what has been written. So that's why. So all papers are scanned and sent across. The other thing is many candidates leave questions unanswered, and this guarantees the loss of those marks for those questions. The bullet points about sufficient working should also be emphasized to your students. So it's worth, even though invigilators read all this, it's worth you reading and sharing that and explaining behind the reasons behind each one here. The other thing is that it also mentions about the calculators that you can see here, and we know that we can use them, but it's worth sharing those instructions for them. Yeah, what I'd like you to do also in your delegate booklet about this, so there's the second sheet here. It mentions discuss in detail in the front cover. How much time should be spent on each question? So we know the overall one is, so this is 100 marks. But then you need to think about how you distribute that. Is there a strategy you would use to advise your students on how to go through the paper? Do they start at the beginning? Do they read the whole paper first, approach the difficult questions first? What do you suggest to your students? So I will just say 2 minutes, not more than that. Have a think about that. Have a think about that, and then if you jot some notes. Thank you. Again, welcome back, and I hope that you had a think. If you thought and consider any of this, there are different approaches that we can use, and even talking with the students. Sometimes some of the students want to go through from the start to the end, and like someone mentioned in the chat as well, they build confidence by doing the first questions first. Here, one thing that I always tell some of our other students is, just because you come across a topic in the beginning that you can't remember doesn't mean you don't know the difficult questions, and that's building that confidence with them. We have someone else also sharing in the chat here. Again, you advise 1 minute per mark, bank some extra minutes for some more difficult questions at the end. Quick start at the beginning and moving to the end. If stuck, try and move on and come back to it. And sometimes I even tell them to maybe fold the page at the start because they'll forget. Also focusing on understanding the question or assuming they know the question. That's another thing, especially in the more wordy ones. Highlighting and underlining key facts as well. Or using different shapes, whether they circle something, underline something else, so that they can process the actual information before they dive into it as well. So there's different information, different things that we advise in here. Thank you again for sharing within the chats. If we look at, there's also making sure that we are aware of the formula sheets that are given, and this is the for MA1, and that's the one that every formula here that's given to them. The simple trigonometry of Pythagoras is no longer given to the candidates, and that's something to be aware of. And in terms of the 4MB1, if in case you decide to have that one, here no formula is given for paper 1 at all, so no formula here. In terms of paper 2, the formulae needing are usually put aside. They're put aside next to the question. An example is given there. So if anything that they will offer them will be with the question. That's only for paper 2. So there's a difference there in the approaches on the 2 specifications in terms of the papers and how they are given out. Now, the other thing to mention here, so it's when you're deciding on the different, we touched upon this in the previous session here. There are different factors that you have to consider in terms of which specification to have, and that's so you have the linear A, the B, and then you have the modular, and then on top of that you have the foundation or higher in case you're doing the A specification, and you shouldn't just be looking. You should be looking at the style of questions, the percentage of problem solving and reasoning in terms of high end tier, in terms of the formula sheets, and in terms of if you want the whole content. So those are more and more factors that when you come to decide on the tiers that you want to put, and that's also which specification you want to give. And again, are you teaching A level as well within your in the international A level, and are your students at that caliber of students that will possibly move on to that and you want to keep as well? The competitive advantage with other schools around your area, and those are things to consider when putting this to them as well. Just before I move on, I just have a few comments here. That's worth you if you want to have a look at the chat as well. Thanks for all the contributions. Yep, and some people have also mentioned about reading it clearly. The marks allocated, read how many marks, how many steps, how many minutes they have to. Yep, and that's training our students on that. Thank you again for your contributions. So then that also leads us to our activity 6. That was just the paper. So if we move to activity 6 here, so and then I'm going to give you a bit longer because this requires a bit of working from us as well. So activity 6, you will have questions. So there's one question there which is on the slide as well. So it's from paper 1F, and you also have a question 20 from 2H, which follows through. You might have to scroll this way, so you might have to scroll up and down if you haven't printed the sheets, or you might want to scroll up and write somewhere else if you can. So in this, what the activity says, so that we have two questions, and we also have the mark scheme. So we have question, the foundation one, followed by the mark scheme, and then you have two responses of two students who've answered this. And then you have the highest, just to give you a bit of an exposure to both. We have the higher paper, we have the mark scheme of that higher question there, and then again, you have the two responses that follow that one then. And then the task is, if you could use those mark schemes to mark that. Now, one thing I could suggest before you start is perhaps actually complete the questions yourselves. Because once you complete and understand what the question is actually asking, when you're looking at the marks in there, you have that. You then have to make some judgments on whether, based on what we explained in the marks, should they be given those marks. Remember what we said about the D mark, what about when do you give the A mark and when do you give the B mark? If you have any queries, I'll be in the background again, so you can ask me in the chat and I'll try and answer. So then we are going to then say, let's say, because there's 4 responses and you have to also answer the questions, I'm going to say give 15 minutes for this task. Okay, so about 15 minutes for you to then answer the questions, understand them, mark the 2 responses and decide whether they get the M and the A. Then we'll come back and then I'll share with you where they have actually been given the marks. You might disagree with this, but you might think that, oh, they were too generous or too, but it's not. It's about following the maximum as strictly as we can, as the examiners do. So 15 minutes. So if I say 25, 35, so about 40 past, I'll give you, because it's a nice task. I've done this task with my teachers. We disagreed in a lot, but it's all about aligning to what the examiners do, so that we are more consistent between us, but also with the examiners. So I'll come back to you at 40 past. I'll be in the background answering any questions. If I could encourage anyone to share answers, or even unmute their mics at this point. I will put one by one the students' responses on there. Give me 1 second. Just realized I'm just changing the slide so that we can, there you go. So if we look at the first student had those responses there, and that's in your booklet as well. Would anyone like to either unmute themselves and just share? Some of you have put in the chat already, so feel free to put in the chat here or unmute yourself. So first response, some people said the 2 method marks should be given. Another person said that they seem very confused in terms of this. Would anyone else like to contribute within this before I share the first one? 2 marks for the first response and 0 for the second will come. Okay, so and then I agree with some of you here. So this is what they gave. Yep, 2 for the first one. So they got an M1 for finding 3,575. They got another method mark here for finding 2,145, but 0 marks because it subtracts the number of boys from the total instead of the number of children. And then because of that, the accuracy mark is 0 because it follows the M0 as we said earlier on. In the second one, you said 0 marks for that one. Now in this question, what you need to be careful with, it doesn't say show you're working, it says work out the number. So that's important. So there is no working, possibly because the candidate has not read the question here. However, we still award 2 method marks because those are calculated answers that could not possibly have been guessed. So because they show those final answers there, those 2 answers there, there's no way that they would have been guessed. So we have to positively give the marks in this case here, but no further marks are given after that. So they get the 2 marks in that case. If I move on to the next part here, for that question, so that's the second on the higher paper. People are saying 2 marks for this one. Anyone else would like to contribute towards that? Would you give 2 marks or? Just wait to see if anyone wants to also type down or unmute themselves as well. So in this case, sorry, there we go. Sorry, it's behind my. So we got 1 method mark for correct substitution, 0 for an incorrect trinomial, and we have a DM1 there for a complete method to solve the trinomial as well. But then we have incorrect values, so they lose the 2 accuracy marks there. As for the second student there, again, 1 for correct substitution, 1 for correct accuracy there. Another mark there that we have for complete method to solve it. A 0 only for because we only have 1 correct value of x, so they can't get the accuracy mark there, and only 1 pair of correct coordinates. So again, 0 marks in that case, and that's how. Now, what I'd like us to now, if you reflected upon your own working, I'm going to give 1 more question with again some responses. So if you look at activity 7 within your booklets, and that one there. So activity 7, you have another equation, another question there, sorry. You have the marks in for it. And then what you have then is, and the reason we're having this one is kind of a lot more steps to mark and a lot harder to mark this. So we have responses of 3 different students. So in this case, I will then ask you again to solve the question, then have a look at the mark scheme, then have a look at the three responses and give the marks as you have. And then I'll go through those and then see whether you agree or not. So reflect on what you've just done now, and then have a look at this. Now, again, I'm looking at the time. I'm going to give about 10 minutes only on this one as it's 45 past. So I'll give 10 minutes for this, slightly less, for you guys to answer and look at the three responses as well. So up to 54, we'll go through that quickly. So again, welcome back. Let's just go through this activity here and see if you agree with this. So the responses you have here. There's the first one there. As you can see, that this response here, part A, no attempt. So they went to straight B and they get 1 method mark for what you can see there. And that's for the quadratic. They still have plus or minus, so 0 accuracy marks. And the final answer is in decimal as well. Part C is an incorrect working throughout, so no marks. So total, they get 1 out of 12. If we look at the response 2, so the second one, they get a lot more working marks, and you can see them. For part A, and they get all 4 working marks and an accuracy mark, and you can see that there. And then for part B, they get the working mark and the accuracy mark. For part 2 of that, part B is they get both marks as well. And then for C, for part C here, as you can see, they get the 2 working marks and the accuracy mark as well. And then finally, if we look at the third response, here, we have all 4 working marks for part A and an accuracy mark. For BI, they get the 1 method mark there, but no accuracy mark. For part 2, they get 0 marks as well. And then for part C, they get no marks again. Sorry, they get the 1 first method mark there, but they don't get the rest of the marks there. And again, it's making sure, so I'd like you to reflect this point to those method marks agree with what you've given as well. If not, if you have any question, I'll put it on the chat as well and to ask me. But it's making sure that we're consistent with what they give as well. Now, the next thing I'm going to go through just quickly, a few key things that you can perhaps help students prepare for their exams. I'm not going to give any techniques that we can go. You can make some notes if you want on that last booklet here. I'll just run through a few key points quickly. So to ensure our students practice using a whole paper and understand how it's laid out. That's important. Understand the importance of looking at the mark allocation. A lot of you mentioned about looking how many marks there are, and so making sure that we do that. Read the whole question first before any attempt is made to answer it, and also perhaps underlining and getting the key figure and the key information out, and not making an assumption they think they know what the question is if it looks similar to something else. Always show complete methods. An examiner can only assess that the student is thinking by their written work in the examination paper and not just leaving in blank. Encouraging students to write neatly and work in an orderly manner. Understanding that we always provide more than enough paper. You don't need to fill in the whole booklet. And walking, talking mocks, which I'll come across this in a minute as well. So they don't need to fill the whole space. We provide more. And if one does a mistake and wants more papers, they can ask instead of trying to bring everything in a small space and do some marks, calculation errors or sign errors because they're trying to fit that all in. The walking, talking mocks that I mentioned, we've done this in my school as well. Students sit in the same exam room where they do their exam, preferably in the same seats as well. If the exam officer has got the seating plan, students are given exam paper which is close to being like a real thing as possible. And then students are literally walk through every question on the paper. The person leading the session talks them through the smaller steps, such as underlining keywords, how to plan, things to remember, and maybe mapping it across the different specifications or the different content. Students then write in their responses in a time condition as well. And therefore you're guiding them through, you're getting them used to the environment as well. And then that's the purpose of this. If you haven't gone through it, it's worth you trying this. Finally, just before we finish, I just want to remind you of the different support that Pearson offers. and the different platforms. And if you're not utilizing them, if you were part of the previous modules, it's also where it'll be a repeat here, but just for anyone who missed it in our previous modules here. First of all our resources are split into 3 sections: the planning and teaching and learning, the exam preparation assessment, and the result support ones. And here you can see we have a variety of things. And with the recording and with the slides shared, you can go through back to this and see what kind of resources we offer. Our website as well, the qualification website, you have that you have the resources here, course materials, which is split into those 3 areas as well, where you can find it, and we keep updating it continuously with more materials. The other thing I'd like to mention is the Resource Plus. It's a tool that teachers can find useful analysis of the students and their own teaching performance. And that's quite useful after the results have come out, as all the data is uploaded on there, and then you can actually analyze and see the strengths and the weaknesses in a class, or by a whole cohort, or by school, and against national as well. And it's quite good to then discuss with the team about how you can perhaps maybe share some good practice or other methods or techniques that work better, or if there's a common trend between different classes within your school that you might want to then go through. So it's a good CPD to taking this information out from there. It's free and it's online. And as I said, it's accessible. You just need to make sure you have the logins for that. Alongside that, we have the Exam Wizard. That's a great free tool that you can use to create different worksheets, assessments, or even your mocks if you want to just organize your own kind of, you don't want to use a full paper or shadow papers or anything else like that. Within that, we provide the mark schemes, but also the examiner's report, because they're quite useful to showing you the common trends, common mistakes, misconceptions that the examiners highlight in each series. So again, a very useful tool. Alongside all this, we do offer free access to the scripts instantly on the results day. And a good practice would be taking a student, a weak, middle, and high ability student within your class, hiding the marks, and then trying to give the mark allocation as well on that specific paper, especially if you intend to use that paper as a mock internally with another year group that you have. Also to see that if your judgment is aligned with the examiner's judgment as well. So a combination, or looking at the strengths and weaknesses and seeing the misconception of the access scripts, and then creating another worksheet, those 3 tools are quite useful in preparing our students as well. On top of that, we have some paid resources that are available, as well as the teaching hubs, if you haven't, that I mentioned before. And then what I'd like to say, the teaching hub offers that network, offers those front of class resources. You don't have to, but there's other resources that you can have as well. And when it comes to paid resources, what I would recommend is looking and seeing if you're happy with the layout, with the demand of those questions that they have. Are they similar to what the examiners give? Are they with what the examiners give, as well as do they take it to the level that you want them to be within that? So it's worth having a look at the different resources there, and then deciding which one is appropriate, is the right one for yourselves. If you have any questions regarding the teaching hub, again, talking to your Pearson local representative is worth it, because then they can give you more information. It covers, it's meant to support your planning. It's meant to help you deliver your lessons and to meet the content. Exam ready, to help you get the students exam ready. And again, more information can be given by your Pearson local representative. These are some of the published resources that you can access. Again, you don't need to buy this to deliver the qualification. It's just shared with you, the student book here, and you can find more information from the website there below. I did mention the teaching hub earlier on, and that's just some more information there for yourselves. And like I mentioned earlier, in any of the questions, we do have a maths team. I'm part of that maths team as well. They'll reach out if they needed some questions. Nicola and Mark work directly with that constantly and answering any queries. You can follow them on Twitter on the as well as downloading the Emporium app and emailing teachingmaths@pearson.com. That you can then ask questions around the year. And if you have any resources or any free resources that we should then add and to our qualification website or the Emporium website, then you can email them and ask them, and people like myself will work together and either answer your questions or create the resources too. At this point, I'd like to thank you for joining us to this second module. Some of you have asked about the certificates. I will pass the list, the registered, to the maths team, and they should reach out with you. And I think you had to attend both of them to get that certificate from them. At this moment, I'll just have another 2-3 minutes here, I'll wait in the background. If there's any questions that you'd like to ask, either on the chat or unmute yourselves, we'll give another 2-3 minutes to ask any of your queries. But again, on behalf of Pearson, I'd like to thank you for joining the session today.